and we're going to have a discussion about this week's Torah portion. I'm going to invite you to turn to page 833, and I'm going to read chapter 12, verses 1 to 16 out loud. I invite you to follow along with me, and as I'm reading, you have a job. Your job is to think of all the questions that these verses raise. Okay, and whatever question you're thinking of, I guarantee it's a good question, and I guarantee that the commentators for the last 2,000 years have also had the same question. So don't be shy about your questions, all right? So here we go. When they were in Hatzoroth, Miriam and Aaron spoke against Moses because of the Cushite woman he had married. He married a Cushite woman. They said, "Has the Lord spoken only through Moses? Has he not spoken through us as well?" And the Lord heard it. Now Moses was a very humble man, more so than any other man on earth. Suddenly the Lord called to Moses, Aaron, and Miriam, "Come out, you three, to the tent of meeting." So the three of them went out. The Lord came down in a pillar of cloud, stopped at the entrance of the tent, and called out, "Aaron and Miriam." The two of them came forward, and he said, "Hear these my words. When a prophet of the Lord arises among you, I make myself known to him in a vision. I speak with him in a dream. Not so with my servant Moses. He is trusted throughout my household. With him I speak mouth to mouth, plainly and not in riddles, and he beholds the likeness of the Lord. How then did you not shrink from speaking against my servant Moses?" Still incensed with them, the Lord departed. As the cloud withdrew from the tent, there was Miriam, stricken with snow-white scales. When Aaron turned toward Miriam, he saw that she was stricken with scales. And Aaron said to Moses, "O my Lord, account not us the sin which we committed in our folly. Let her not be as one dead, who emerges from his mother's womb with his flesh half eaten away." So Moses cried out to the Lord, saying, "El na rafan Allah, O God, pray heal her." But the Lord said to Moses, "If her father spat in her face, would she not bear her shame for 7 days? Let her be shut out of the camp for 7 days, and then let her be readmitted." So Miriam was shut out of the camp for 7 days, and the people did not march on until Miriam was readmitted. After that, the people set out from Hatzoroth and encamped in the wilderness of Paran. All right, questions? Just put up your hand and I'll call on you. Great, yeah, Daniel.
So God said that it doesn't speak, that he only speaks to Moses with like actual words and not in riddles, while he's speaking to Aaron and Miriam, not in riddles.
Perfect, great, right. It seems like a bit of a contradiction, right? Thank you, wonderful. Yeah, Donna.
I have a medical question.
Oh no, a medical question, yes. Oh, the doctor is asking a medical question. She's asking me, a rabbi, a medical question, yes.
What kind of disease did Miriam have? That tzaraat, you don't get healed in a week. So what kind of a disease?
Right. So tzaraat is often translated as leprosy, but actually what we say is that it's probably not leprosy. It's probably something more like psoriasis or eczema. I'm definitely not a dermatologist. It's a scaly skin disease, but probably not leprosy. So whether or not it was, the question, it's an interesting question, Donna, because it doesn't say she was shut out for 7 days, but it doesn't say that she was healed. She was just readmitted in 7 days, right? So let her be shut out, and then she was readmitted. So, but it's an interesting question what tzaraat is. Yeah.
That when we got married, had a sacrifice the little lamb because the skin was white.
Yeah, dude.
Yeah, why did Miriam get such a severe punishment for speaking Lashon Hara? And the other question I have is, why are they saying that Moses is very, very humble? So I'm just curious.
Right. So great questions. Right. So at the beginning, Miriam and Aaron are having a conversation about Moses. How come only Miriam is punished, right? Like, why isn't Aaron punished as well? And why is the punishment so severe, right? And what, like, why is Moses' humility brought up here? Why, like, you know, he's considered our most humble prophet. Yeah, Maxine. So, okay, so Maxine, I love it. Is it possible we have early gender discrimination? We'll examine that. We'll look at that, actually. Yeah. What is wrong with being a Cushite? Like, what's the problem here? Exactly, he married a Cushite. Oy vey, what's the problem? Great. Yeah.
What brought this on suddenly was this, we have no idea why they bring this up now. He married her a long time ago. Why now?
Great, great. He married Zipporah long ago, right? He married her back in the books of Exodus. We're already in the book of Numbers. So what's the issue now? What's the big deal? He's been married to Zipporah for a long time. Great. Any other questions?
The difference between their argument is against the wife, but really their argument is why aren't we as prophets like Moses? So there's a disjunction between what they're talking about and then what they're asking for.
Great, exactly, right. So that there's what exactly what was the problem with what they were talking about? Are they complaining about his wife? Are they complaining about the fact that he gets to lead and they don't? What's going on? Yeah.
It says here in the first sentence, when they were in Hezrah, Miriam and Aaron spoke against Moses because of the Cushite woman he had married. He married a Cushite woman. It doesn't say if Aaron said that or if Miriam said that. So maybe it was Miriam that said that, and that's why she was punished?
Great, wonderful. Okay, any more? Yeah, Brian.
There's so many conflicting things in the Torah about being a prophet, right? Because Joshua complains at some point, saying, why is so-and-so being a prophet? And Moses said, everybody should be a prophet. And what happens? That when she complains, or Aaron complains, they get punished.
Right.
And then there's the opposite side with Korah. He says, why are you special? And he gets buried in the earth. So there are a lot of contradictions.
Yes, the Torah definitely has a lot of contradictions, and what I love about this conversation is you can lift them up. And so part of what we do when we read Torah is to not be afraid of the things that seem like contradictory or inconsistent, because it gives us an opportunity to dig in and understand, try to put our own frame on it and understand what's happening. So yes, last one.
Moses, as did Aaron and others, pleads with God for leniency to
Right. So Moses pleads with God to heal Miriam, right? And God actually listens, right? And God does. God. Well, we know that she goes with them, but right. So God listens to Moses. We've seen that before. So I think that you guys have all got source sheets that we handed out. I'm going to invite someone to read out loud source number 2. So a lot of these sources are from. Oh, I should have brought it with me. There's a wonderful chumash. We have the Eitz Chaim here. There's something called the Torah, a women's commentary. It's the green version. So this is from page 859. Darcy, great.
The presence of two female characters stands out in this story. One, Miriam, is active and central. She constitutes the story's axis. The other, Moses' unnamed wife, called a dark-skinned or Cushite woman, is unseen and silent, though from her behind-the-scenes position, she is the story's catalyst.
So what do we think about that? This lifting up of the story sort of centers around two women. Thoughts? It's sort of unusual for the women to be the catalyst for what happens in our Bible, in our Torah, although not necessarily so with women. Yeah, Maxine.
These are not, in either case, complementary commentaries. They're both negative. Even the unseen wife is seen as a trauma or a trouble to Moses. And Miriam certainly is subject to punishment for her attempt to act as a prophetess and to be a prophetess. So the suggestion is limited behavior, limited action is appropriate or to get punished.
Great. So is it favorable or unfavorable to women? Right. So it's like maybe not so favorable. And someone, sorry, I lost track. So the comment number 3, the source number 3, someone actually raised this issue, raised this thought actually about what was happening to Miriam. Does someone want? I forget who raised it, but does someone want to read source number 3? Darcy. Okay, Darcy, you're going to be our reader. I'm just getting tired of hearing my voice, so Darcy, go for it.
Feminist interpreters often understand this story as an intended rebuke of a woman who aspires to a leadership role equal to a man's, reading it as prejudicial to women on and number of levels. It is also possible to read this account more sympathetically as a case in which God sides with one maligned woman, Moses' wife, against a more powerful one, Miriam.
So it's interesting because on the one hand, someone said, maybe it's like was a woman getting out of her position, right? The comment came before, like maybe she was getting too uppity, right? So she was punished for being too uppity. But it's interesting because now what they're saying is like perhaps God was siding with Moses' wife, who was the sort of less powerful one, powerless one, against the more powerful one, Miriam. Yeah, Daniel.
I mean, Korah did the same thing. He was a man, and he got killed. He got eaten up by the ground.
Right. So in a way, so Miriam gets off easier. So Miriam speaks. So the question is actually, it's an interesting one because is Miriam's punishment because she criticized Moses' wife, and it's not clear, right? There's a lot of different opinions. So Korah, actually, we're going to get to him later in the Bible, but Korah basically challenges Moses and says, like, how come you're the only one who gets to lead? Shouldn't this be sort of more democratic? And God doesn't like that, and Korah actually dies because of it. So Korah challenges Moses' leadership. God doesn't like it. Korah dies. Here, Miriam challenges Moses' leadership. Miriam and Aaron are challenging Moses' leadership, and Miriam gets a skin disease. The question, I think, is, what did Miriam do that she was punished for? Was it the challenge of the leadership, or was it the criticism of Moses' wife? And that's one of the questions we're going to be digging into a little bit. Yeah, Elliot.
There is that alternate theory that the rabbis talk about, that Miriam was actually concerned about Tzipporah.
Great, that's where I'm going right now. Thank you. That's if you read the next source. So, I'm just kidding. No, right. So like, what was Miriam? What what she was doing so bad? So the next page, I'll just start to read. So Rashi, the 11th century French commentator, who's very prolific. So he starts with the phrase, and Miriam and Aaron spoke. So it's interesting because someone asked this question, how come Miriam was punished, which really troubles the commentator and Aaron wasn't. And it starts with the tidaber Miriam ve'Aharon. The interesting word was that tidaber, they were speaking together, but tidaber is the feminine word. So it's in the grammar it's as if only Miriam was speaking. So it says she opened the conversation, and so Scripture, our Torah mentions her first. So it's interesting that she was the one who started the trouble. She was the troublemaker, Aaron. So I love this. I love this because there's 3 children, and you can think of it as birth order. Miriam's the eldest, right? Like she's like. If you're going to stereotype, the eldest can be the troublemaker, like the bossy one, right? Aaron's the middle child. He's sort of the peacemaker. And we see this actually because we see that Aaron is a peacemaker. And Moses is the baby. He's kind of, so Miriam is playing her role here as kind of the bossy one. But here's what they say that Miriam did and what she was talking about. And so what did Miriam know that Moses, just bear with me while I read this. Whence did Miriam know that Moses had separated from his wife? So Rashi says that what Miriam was saying that Moses separated from his wife because Miriam was beside Tzipporah, that's Moses' wife, when it was told to Moses, Eldad and Medad, don't worry about who they are prophesizing in the camp. So Tzipporah hears this, that there's two other people prophesizing. And she says, woe to the wives of these people if they have anything to do with prophecy, for they will separate from their wives just as my husband separated from me. So Miriam is hearing the fact that Tzipporah is saying, Moses is separating from me, which means that they're not having familial relations anymore. So Miriam is concerned that that's happening. And it was from this that Miriam knew, because she overheard Tzipporah say, it sounds like prophets don't actually have relationships with their wives. So from this, it was said that Miriam knew about it. And so I bolded this. Now, just as this is the case with Miriam, who had no intention to disparage and was punished severely, how much more so in the case of one who intentionally speaks in disparagement of their fellow. So this is a rabbinic exegetical principle called kol v'chomer. So this, which means that, so Miriam was actually not trying to disparage Moses. She was concerned, right? She was saying, oh no, it's not good because he's not having relationships with Zipporah. That's bad. She wasn't actually saying something bad, and she was punished. So what the Rashi is saying, if she was punished for saying something not necessarily so bad, how much more will you be punished for saying something bad? You guys with me so far? It's a lot. Okay. So the question is the question is what was Miriam concerned about, and what was this all about? So I'm just going to go to the next source, which is Aviva Zornberg, another 21st century living biblical commentator. So why is Zipporah, so Moses' wife is Zipporah, why is she called the Cushite woman, right? Rashi offers 3 explanations. Because her undeniable beauty is indicated in the undeniable blackness of an Ethiopian, because of the numerological value of the word Cushite is equivalent to the word beauty. So they're calling her Cushite because it's another name for beautiful, or it could be the opposite, which is you're calling her Cushite, which means black, to ward off the evil eye. So it's either because she's beautiful or you don't want the evil eye to come to her. And she's referred to twice as the Cushite woman. But it's striking, I'm going to the next one, that it's actually interesting because it centers on Moses' separation from his beautiful wife. It inverts the meaning of the story. So it's not Moses' marriage that she's concerned about, but she's concerned about his abandonment. But then she goes on to make a really interesting point in the next source, which is source 6. So there's a story in the Talmud about Miriam, and it says that. So we're going back to when the Israelites were slaves, and Pharaoh decrees that the firstborn males will be killed. And so this is a story of Midrash. It's not in the Torah, but it's a rabbinic story of Midrash, and it says that Moses' father, Miriam's father, Miriam and Aaron's father, divorced his wife because he was afraid to have a male baby because how terrible would it be to have a son and then to watch it be killed? And so all the other Israelites followed his lead. So all the Israelites divorced their wives. And Miriam, who the rabbis say was like 6, the 6-year-old Pisher comes to her father and says, Dad, what are you doing? What you're doing is worse than what Pharaoh did. Pharaoh decreed that the boys will be killed. By divorcing your wives and not having any children, that means we won't even have girls. So, and also, you're giving up hope, right? And we have to have hope. So Miriam convinced, the 6-year-old Miriam, convinced her father to remarry his wife, and everyone else remarried, and then they started having babies again, and that's why Moses was born, right? Because Miriam was instrumental in Moses being born. Miriam really cares about continuity a lot. So when she hears that Moses now, who was born because she was instrumental in making sure that her father remarried his wife, is now separating from his wife, she's terribly concerned because this is the same problem that happened before. So she goes to her, goes to her brother and says, like, this is not good. So that's what Aviva Zornberg is imagining what happened. The next source, source number 7. Says, no. You guys have it all wrong. The Cushite woman wasn't Zipporah. It was another wife. They say Moses, the reason he got criticized was because Moses went to Cush. Cush was this place that was, we think about, the rabbis thought about something like Ethiopia. He went to Cush for a while, and he found another wife, and he brought her back. So no wonder Miriam's upset. She's like, he's still married to Zipporah. What's with the second wife, right? Because it's not clear. Again, this is like the Bible. There's so much ambiguity that it raises so many possible interpretations. Thoughts so far about all the stuff that I've just brought up? Yes?
It's about trying to make Miriam, she didn't really, why did God suddenly, Hashem, heard what was going on and got so furious that he demanded they all show up for a showdown?
Great. Okay. So, how do you feel about reading the next source because it's an answer to the question you just asked?
It's the right place.
That's okay. Okay, Darcy, you want to read? Source number 8, Nechama Leibowitz.
It remains difficult to understand why the Torah was not more explicit about the circumstances of what Miriam actually said. Evidently, the Torah did not wish to prohibit merely explicit gossip about our fellow men in general and the spiritual leaders of our generation in particular. It wished to prohibit any kind of talk or gossip disparaging our fellow man and maybe woman.
So what's Nechama Leibowitz's answer to the question? Hang on, Rox. Maxine, I want to see if anyone else has. It doesn't matter, yeah.
Simple disparagement is deserving of
Right. So it doesn't even matter. Like, she might have been trying to do the right thing, right? She might have been concerned, but the fact that she actually disparaged Moses, disparaged her brother, is worthy of punishment. The fact that she said anything about him at all is what brought God's wrath. And this is the source for the rabbinic prohibition of what we call lashon hara, which technically literally means an evil tongue, a bad tongue. So the rabbis are very, very adamant that we should not talk badly about people because it just leads to bad things happening. So what happens, and the original source for this is the rabbis see the fact that Miriam's sin was actually talking badly, she reads, the rabbis read it as she's disparaging her brother, and so she's punished because we shouldn't disparage anyone, let alone our brothers. And the skin disease that Dr. Shani asked about, tzara'at, earlier in Leviticus, we read about something called mitzora. It's the same skin disease. Mitzora has the same kind of sort of sound. The rabbis love doing this. It sounds like, close enough for them, motzi shem ra, which means a bad thing coming out of your mouth, or a bad word coming out of your mouth. So the rabbis say that if you do lashon hara, if you gossip, you're going to be punished with this skin disease, this motzi shem ra, this mitzora, and it's consistent because that's what she got. She got this version of mitzora, of tzarat. Yeah, in the back.
I read a little further in the commentary that she didn't speak to Moses directly, which was a big problem. But who was she talking about this with? Was it just with Aaron? And aren't you allowed to kind of work out problems with close confidants? That doesn't really count as, how does that count as gossip?
Right. So yes. So there's gossip, which is Ricky Loot, and then there's also motzi shem ra. So it's a great question because on the one hand, we want to be able to have people to work things out with, right? And I think it depends on the tone. And so this next source might be very surprising. It's from the Talmud, and I'll read it. It says, Rav Dimi, the brother of Rav Safra, taught, a person should never speak about his fellow's good qualities, because out of a discussion of his good qualities may come a discussion of his faults, which is even harder because you're saying, like, sometimes you need a partner to work stuff out with. But you know what? If I say Sierra has a beautiful voice, I'm not supposed to say that because someone else might say, well, since you're bringing up Sierra's voice, I'm just picking on Sierra right here. Because talking about anyone can invite someone else to say something bad, and you don't want to invite anyone to say something bad. So yes, I mean, there's a fine line between like having like a chavruta, which we're supposed to have to work things through, and being very, very fastidious about not saying negative things about something. Maxine, I know you've been wanting to say something.
Moses having the counsel of Jethro, who took a leader who didn't know how to run his encampment and gave him administrative advice. And Jethro was the father-in-law.
Right.
So there is this other quiet, missing mention of how Moses is administrating and under what auspices Moses is administrating. And the fact of criticizing the perhaps second wife, especially in light of the organizational presence of the father-in-law.
Right. It's unclear what the criticism is. Yeah, one more.
unreasonable, though, what you just suggested, or the suggested that you shouldn't say anything good about someone blessed and invite someone to put it in perspective, so to speak, by saying something negative. Because that other person has a choice to not say something negative.
Yeah. Yeah, so I mean, the rabbis tend to hyperbole sometimes, but I think what they're doing, it's a cautionary tale. So, I mean, I would err on the side of saying something nice. The better thing to do, though, I think that this is really the point of it all. It's better, rather than me saying to Valerie, doesn't Sierra have a nice voice? The rabbis want me to say to Sierra, you have a beautiful voice, right? Talk to the person. If you have a critique, talk to the person. Don't say it outside. Did you have, yeah.
I find it very interesting with how unspecific the story is about what was the wrong actually committed. It's extremely specific about the punishment that was, given to Miriam. And it seems like it's a cautionary tale in that when things actually do escalate, no matter what you think the circumstances were that led to it, you can't really control the punishment, if that makes sense. So, I mean, we can have a conversation for endlessly about what she did, but ultimately, she ended up suffering very specific consequences for it, no matter how ambiguous the crime was.
Right.
And that is
which is actually it's a theological problem, right? Which is sometimes we see people suffering and we don't know why. It's not necessarily, is it for a sin and is it for some other reason? I'm just noticing the time, so I'm going to close it up. But so the main point of this story that the rabbis really, really focus on is being very, very careful about talking about other people for good and for bad, and we do it all the time, and our society is kind of built on it. So it's a point I really. But I wanted to the last text, which is that what happens is Miriam gets punished, but as you guys pointed out, she wasn't punished like Korach. She was given a skin disease. She was sent out of the camp for 7 days, and she rejoins the camp, and then the Israelites march. But the Israelites don't go marching on until she's back and reintegrated into the camp. They wait for her before they march on, and so there's a Mishnah that says, just like it is with regard to the good deeds. So a person is rewarded measure for measure, which this is a Hebrew term. It's an exegetical principle called midah keneged midah. Miriam waited for baby Moses for 1 hour. So when Miriam, you probably remember the story, his mother, so his mother wants him to live. She puts him in a basket. So the basket goes down the Nile. And Miriam follows the basket and waits for Moses to see what's going to happen and where he's going to end up. So Miriam waited for baby Moses for 1 hour at the Nile. So it just uses the text for where it says from Exodus 2:4. Therefore, the Jewish people delayed their travels for 7 days to wait with her, because it says the people would not journey until Miriam was brought in again. So Miriam might have done something bad, but she was also rewarded for what she did was good. And they say, the rabbis like to say that she was rewarded in the same way that, that she did the good deed before, this kind of measure for measure. And I just want to point out, I just want to highlight Miriam and the importance in her whole story and the narrative in the Torah. So the Midrash has it because of her that Moses was born. The Midrash has it, the Torah has it because of her following Moses. She waits to make sure he's safe and sees that Pharaoh's daughter is going to adopt her. And so Miriam's a central person in the story and in Moses' life, actually. And so the Torah is acknowledging this and saying, you know what, we are waiting for Miriam, that she might have done something wrong, but we're reintegrating her into the camp. And I think that that's the important part of the story, which is, we all make mistakes. We all sometimes suffer, we all get punished, and then we have to be reintegrated into the community and forgiven and all march forward together as a community. So Shabbat Shalom.